Hello, we are Brigade of Beings, a diagnosed dissociative identity disorder system. My name is Atlas, and this video is about non-human alters. This is a video that we have been trying to make for literally half of a year, so I'm very excited to finally get down to filming it and getting it all together and out for you guys as soon as we possibly can. Now, what is a non-human alter? Pretty self-explanatory. It's any alter in a dissociative identity disorder system or otherwise specified dissociative disorder system who isn't human. Now, that might not really seem conceivable or possible, and it is a bit weird and wacky and a bit of a unique topic. It's not very often where you meet someone and they're like, oh yeah, there's an animal or a dragon or a fairy that lives inside my brain. But it's very, very common for systems. So we wanted to put together this video, not just with our experience, but also with other systems that we've spoken to online, with their experiences. So we can try and give a bit of a more well-rounded picture as to what it was like both being a non-human alter and having non-human alters in your system. There's two important things that I should mention before we get into the chunk of this video. The first, we use sources. I've got them on the screen. We have two that we pull direct quotes from, and then our own lived experiences and other lived experiences. And we've probably pulled from a bunch of other sources subconsciously. We put together this script over 7-8 months ago, 6 months ago, I don't know. Time's weird. And we've changed laptops from them, so I've lost our source list in that laptop change. So I do apologize, but these are the two that I know that we definitely used. So you can feel free to look them up if you want to. Second thing, there's some very big trigger warnings for this video. DID and OSD type 1 are trauma disorders, and non-human alters, 9 times out of 10, come from some pretty horrific trauma. So there is a trigger warning for bestiality, a trigger warning for SA, a trigger warning for dehumanization. There's probably some other things that I've missed. They should be on the screen written down somewhere for you all. But yeah, just bear that in mind. This isn't an easy video, it's not an easy watch. So take care of yourselves while you're watching. If you need to pause, take breaks, or just abandon the video altogether, totally fair, no judgment. We really put our heart and soul into a big script for this video that really went into things a lot more in depth, but it is so much and so heavy that we've kind of had to abandon that. So you might seem a bit more flippant, a bit more casual, but we do understand that this is a very heavy topic. That's just our way of coping and getting through, because we do really want to make this video. We just have had to find a way that is manageable for us because, yeah, trauma is hard. Trauma is hard. One of the first reasons that we know non-human alters exist is because we have them in our system. We have had non-human alters in our system for as long as any of us can remember. They weren't the first alters around. Violet, whose quote I'll read to you soon, is one of the first alters who was around in our system. But from the time we were 4 or 5 years old, we very definitely had a pack of wolves that existed in our system. And we first met them through dreams. And they had a very specific role that they would always play out in these dreams, and we'd always remember these dreams very, very vividly, and they had this feeling of importance and weight to them, and it was just the same pack of wolves over and over again, repeating these same behaviors. And as we kind of grew up and after we moved houses, these dreams stopped and petered out, but we never forgot them. They always stay in the back of our mind. I can remember those dreams more vividly than I can most of the actual childhood that we lived. And it wasn't until we were in therapy at 19, 20 years old that we realized that this pack of wolves had actually been a collection of alters. And so half of that pack has now fused into someone in our system called Rent. He is human now and he is a caretaker, but he still has like a lot of connections to being a wolf, and has just, his presence within the system still feels very wolf-like, even though he is a human now. He conceives himself as human. But the other half of the wolf pack we recently discovered is still around. They're still wolves. They've just been dormant for this time because their role hasn't been necessary. And so they're still wolves. They're not fully wolves. They can speak English, They know how to use the body like it's human. They made some pit crews to depict themselves, and they kind of picked this anthropomorphic animal-human hybrid, which is also typical for systems. It's not always purely one animal or one non-human type that an alter is. And even though they were 100% wolves when we were children, as we've grown and as now our needs are different and their requirements within the system are different, they have changed and adapted to keep up with that. Hi, it's Violet jumping into script writing here. I don't know if I will film this bit myself, but if I don't, feel free to use these words, but say that specifically for me. I'm writing this before we've done any additional formal research on the topic from the information we've absorbed since beginning to learn about DID in 2016-2017. In that time, we have seen non-human alters be constantly viewed as either impossible or a spectacle. Neither of these are true. There is nothing spectacular about having been abused in such a way that causes the brain to split a non-human alter. And as you'll see later in this video, there is extensive research and evidence of non-human alters being present in DID systems. I, myself, am human, but even I have days where, because of the trauma I experienced growing up, I question if I really am human. My humanity was nearly taken from me by my abusers. However, I was able to cling to it. Others in our system were not. It is not the fault of non-human alters for being the way they are. There is nothing morally wrong with being a non-human alter, but there is something morally wrong about harassing people online for experiencing symptoms of their disorder. That is never and will never be okay. And the treatment of non-human alters by the anti-DID fan base, for lack of a better word, is disgusting and helps no one. We spent time putting together arguments to try and convince people that non-human alters are real. And there's evidence here and there's evidence there because we've been put in fake disorder cringe compilation videos for just talking about having non-human alters and explaining the fact that children are traumatized and their brain does whatever it can to survive. And just that got us fake claimed. And I realized that I'm not going to convince these people that non-human alters are real. I'm just not. There's evidence out there. If they cared, they could go looking, but they'd read it and say, oh, it's false. And I just have to accept that. I'm no longer here to convince the people who won't be convinced. But there are people who are just curious, who are like, I don't understand. And so I hope that us talking about our experiences can help those people understand a little bit more, those who are curious and open to learning. And I am trying very hard not to get defensive in this video, but if we do, or if we get snappy, or if things that we say or if quotes that we pull seem very targeted towards, as Violet put it, the anti-DID fan base, that's why. It's because this is a very vulnerable part of ourselves that's constantly harassed and targeted, and it's hard to just let that go, but we have to. Okay, so I pulled up a couple of quotes from formal research here. I know I just said I'm not trying to convince the non-believers, but for those of you who are a bit skeptical, I have pulled some formal research. I would recommend going and reading at least the first one on your own. It's a pretty short read. It is pretty heavy though, although this quote itself kind of sums up all the heaviness, so just bear in mind it does go into a bit more detail about that. The second one is a autobiography by a sister called Jenny Haynes. And George Blair West is, or was, their treating psychiatrist, and he has chapters in there where he expands on different things that Jenny has discussed in her chapters. Also a very good read. If anyone's looking for a novel about DID, I would recommend it. However, it is longer, and again, big trigger warnings, but they do a very good job within the book of warning you where to skip and what trigger warnings you should be mindful of, etc. But yeah, I would recommend reading these if you're curious. The first one is specifically about animal alters, and the second one is specifically about demon alters, but the same sort of concept applies to all non-human alters. I couldn't find an article that summed it up about non-human alters as a whole, so I kind of just put two together so you can kind of see the similarities, and it's the same kind of logic. It's a child's creative brain trying to protect them in any way it possibly can. And after this, I've also got a bunch of quotes from other systems as to why they have non-human alters in their systems. The formation of these animal alters was associated with 1. Being forced to live like an animal. 2. Witnessing animal mutilation, especially in the context of threats that the child will be hurt as the animal is hurt. 3. Bestiality. And 4. The death or deliberate killing of the child's pet. In The Girl in the Green Dress, during his notes, Dr. George Blair West discusses how there is a large group with DID who receive the non-clinical diagnosis of demonic possession, and it then becomes a matter of the church rather than for psychiatric care. These demonic personalities were horribly abused at a very young age, and were inevitably told by their abusers that they were pure evil, or at least they had the devil in them. Some abused child personalities may wholeheartedly adopt this suggestion, as their experiences did, indeed, look like those of a demon. So, as you can see, there is a reason why systems are often so defensive about their non-human alters, because a lot of the time it's tied to pretty severe trauma. Not always, though. There are a couple of other situations where in our system, non-human alters have formed. The first is because of an introject. Introjects need their whole own video, it's another topic, but it is basically when a system takes on the characteristics of someone or something outside of the system, like a teacher, or their pet, or a TV character, that sort of thing. And so we've had introjects in our system from things like Dungeons and Dragons. We've ended up with tieflings, or elves, or genasi. We've also ended up with an introject of Blues from Blue's Clues, who was a dog, because Blue was a dog, and that sort of thing. And there's still trauma, or at least very high stress around those splits when they occur, but it might not be these specific types of trauma that go hand in hand with these quotes. The other one, which is a far nicer way to form in a system, is because the system needs some form of caretaking or some form of soothing. It's still a need, internal or external, that needs to be met. Oftentimes it's through things like neglect or emotional abuse or whatever, but the system needs someone to take care of them. And so it splits a soother or a caretaker, and those can be human, but for us, a lot of our caretakers have been non-human, especially the caretakers who work with littles with trauma, because a lot of our kids who have trauma have had bad experiences with humans. And so for our caretakers to be elves, or to be angels, or to be a dog has been incredibly beneficial into having someone that these children can then build trust with without it being a scary human person, and then slowly working with them to meet other alters in the system who might be human and building up that trust internally. But we couldn't just go into the deep end, so their protectors, their caretakers, couldn't be human to start with. And whilst there is still trauma involved in why they are created that way, they themselves don't hold on to that type of trauma. So we put together a Google form when we were first creating this idea, and sent it out to a bunch of Discord servers that we're in with other systems. I think we posted it on our community tab, and we shared it on our TikTok, just asking for other systems for their experiences. We got 17 responses, which we're pretty happy with, and all 17 of those responses said they had non-human alters. I actually think that we might have been one of these respondents. I'm 90% sure we're one of these respondents, so there were 16 other systems on top of ourselves. And that isn't like the biggest source of evidence, and we were only pooling our community. So this is like a very biased set of information, but it's still a look into some other systems' experiences and some insights into like variety and similarity that comes hand in hand with being a system. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this little bar chart very well, but we asked people what kinds of non-human alters are in their system, and the most common were animal-human hybrids. So that is just someone who is both animal and human. And then next up tied, we have animals and deity or religious figures. So that's 70% and then 58% respectively. We then also had a tie for the next one, which is mythical figures. So that's stuff like elves, trolls, fairies, and ghosts or zombies. And those are both tied at around 52%. The next one we have is robots or cyborgs, and that is 57%. And then we have objects at 17%. Then we drop down to the ones who only had one person into them, although some of these do overlap with the other ones. For example, all of the above. We also have demon kind, and demons written a couple of times. We just have etc., so more than this, and elves. So as you can see, there's an array of what non-human alters can look like. Within our own system, we have had and have so many animals. We've had animals that are always an animal, animals that are animal-human hybrids, animals that shapeshift. We've had lions and tigers and wolves, as I mentioned at the start of this video. We've had a wombat and a deer and cats and dogs. And all sorts of different things. We have a whale shark still, who is our head gatekeeper. We, I believe, also have a lot of animals because we have always been obsessed with animals. We have always loved animals. From as young as I can remember, we prefer watching animal documentaries over cartoons. And so animals were a safe thing for us. They were a protective thing for us. And so it was something we had a lot of exposure to. And so our brain took a lot of inspiration for that when it was protecting itself. We also have a lot of fantasy altars. The main ones that come up with that is elves. We have a lot of elves. A lot of our caretakers are elves. And not like small Christmas elves, like high fantasy elves. We've had dragons, we've had fairies, quite a few fairies as well. We've had the little like brownie / borrowers from the borrowers. They weren't interjects of that, they were just the same species. Apparently we've had flying pigs from a childhood nursery story that we used to have, that sort of thing. We have at least one biblically accurate angel, which is very funny being raised as an atheist. I think it's a good way to kind of put what someone else said in our responses, I don't think we quoted, is that not all religious altars or not all systems who have religious altars were raised religious or relate or experienced religious trauma directly. We've also had a lot of demons, and I think that's really common. There's a lot of different reasons why we've had demons, but a big part of it was not feeling human and feeling like we'd done something wrong because of the way we're being treated, and therefore there must be something wrong about us. We've also had dolls, specifically we had interjects of our childhood dolls, and the other thing that we have a lot of is orbs of light. I believe Daphne was in an introduction video, and Daphne is an orb of light. We've had Peace, who was an orb of light, who's since fused, and we have a bunch of other ones who I don't know very well, so I can't speak on their behalf. Okay, apologies up front if any of the camera angles have changed. My phone did die, had to charge it, had to get back into it. Let's jump back into it. So the next question that we asked is if systems knew why their non-human alters existed. And there was an array of answers, not just system to system, but also within systems. The most common answer was yes for some, no for some, theories for some. And I think that just goes to show quite well that, like, there is not just a different system to system, but within systems when it comes to non-human alters. And that it's totally okay not to know why an alter is the way they are, be that their name, their age, their gender, if they're human or not. For those who did know why non-human alters were present in their system, we asked if they were comfortable expanding, and we picked out 4 of the different reasons that we think kind of cover the majority of answers. Being treated like less than human, wanting to fly away from abuse, not being listened to, feeling invisible, finding comfort in non-human being, and feeling that they could protect us better than humans can, losing faith in humankind at age of 6. One of our non-human alters is the result of survival tactics, like hiding in small spaces to get away from abuse. She's an anthropomorphic lizard. We have a lot of non-human alters. Typically, they can show up like this due to the type of trauma they hold from the non-human form that may be more appropriate or comforting. It may also be drawn for being an introject and being not human within their source. In regards to our dragon altar, he serves the purpose of being sensorially soothing. You can see him in the mind's eyes when visually overstimulated. So my best guess is that there might be something in his formation there. Also, dragons are something we believe could be slayed as a child. So as you can see, a bunch of different reasons, but all this kind of core belief is that is what was most beneficial. DID forms in childhood, and whilst alters can continue to split into adulthood, often the patterns that formed in childhood remain, and the same things that bring comfort remain, and that simple childlike logic can still remain. Now, the next part and the final part of this video is a bunch of quotes from our respondents and messages for singlets, professionals, and other systems. I think it's nice to hear from other systems and to hear from other people and to realize that, especially for systems with non-human alters who might feel like it's something we have to hide or something to be ashamed of, that you're not alone and that there are other systems similar to you, maybe not exactly the same, but similar, and we hear you and we see you, and that it is okay to exist in the way that you do. This first section is singlets. For those who don't know, a singlet is just someone without DID or OSDD. It's someone who's not a system. It's hard at times. It's so hard. I don't tell others because I don't want to be judged. For those incapable of speech, it becomes more obvious, and I care so much to protect them. Just don't judge. As in all things with systems, but especially with non-human alters, please do not judge. Just be kind, accepting, and patient. Non-human alters are not something to gawk at or a sign of faking. They're a sign of specific trauma. It's not a game. We cannot control this. There's no reason why it wouldn't make sense. It's how they are in the inner world, how they identify to be. Nobody is claiming they're changing the body from being human. So the excuse of, it doesn't make sense, does not make sense. These responses circle back to something I mentioned earlier about systems being very defensive of their non-human alters, and it's because of people saying that it doesn't make sense, as that last person said, or isn't real, or couldn't be possible. It's not about the body physically being different to human. It's not about getting supernatural abilities, or suddenly being able to fly, or suddenly being able to shrink so small you can hide in a tiniest spot and never be found. It's about the brain hiding and protecting itself. It's about the brain going, I need to survive this. How do I survive this? And sometimes it going, I cannot possibly have survived this. And forming an altar around those beliefs and those needs. I think I've said this before. I have no idea if professionals watch our videos, but if you do, this little part's for you. That non-human alters are just as needed in the system, and that they should not be ignored or disregarded, especially in a therapy session. The goal is not to be human. The goal is to be healed. Healed does not always equal human. I think that they're real. There's a ton of people who engage in certain media's fiction books and use the escapism or the comfort of not being in reality with humans. And that, like the singlet ones, sometimes these alters have no other idea on how to act, present themselves. We're real. The second point is one that we wanted to touch on more, just because being non-human might not make sense or be normal for a singlet, doesn't make sense that it isn't a normal state of being for a system. As I've kind of mentioned, a lot of our caretakers and soothers are non-humans for comfort reasons, and for them to just suddenly become human would be distressing and wouldn't serve a purpose. There's no point trying to become human if it doesn't serve a purpose. Some alters might want to. There might be alters who are becoming human or reclaiming their humanity as a very powerful thing, but that should be their choice. It should be the individual choice of each individual alter and each individual system, how they want to heal. And if a non-human alters, on whether that means staying the type of non-human they are, changing to a different type of non-human, or becoming human, it's up to them. So if you are a professional and you are treating systems or interacting with systems, make sure that you're communicating with them what healing looks like for them and not just what your textbook says, because we're so much more diverse and unique than any one textbook could sum up. And for my fellow systems out there, hello, we see you. These are some messages for you guys. There is no cookie cutter way to be a non-human alter. They're just as valid as any other alters, and just because a system has non-human alters doesn't automatically mean they're faking. Just because they might be a deity or a demon or an angel does not mean they're rooted in religious trauma. Also, if they want items to comfort them with their non-humanness, like try to make a budget for that. It goes for other system members wanting items too. Have a system budget that you can spend on items for alters. An animal or animal-aligned alter might want to buy ears and tail. Do not shame them for that. To them, they aren't human, and being closer to how they are within his space is often comforting and less dysphoric. We still deserve to be part of the system, no matter how we look or communicate. It can be very overwhelming the first time you meet a non-human alter in your system if that's something you've never come across before. And it can be confusing and concerning and upsetting and even scary sometimes. And it's okay to feel all of those things, but that doesn't mean it's okay to shame them and push them away. There might be safety reasons where they can't front in specific situations, be that because externally it's not safe for people to know you're a system, or you have a job, or you have a job where a dog alter fronting just wouldn't be practical. So you need a gatekeeper or protector to make sure that doesn't happen. But finding the time and the space to allow themselves to express themselves safely and form communication and some form of relationship with them can be very helpful. And that is easier said than done. There are alters in our system, both human and non-human, who I don't have a good relationship with because they're scammy. And I try to put my fear aside and allow them to communicate with our therapist, in our journals, spend time with protectors in front, But that doesn't mean that I'm not scared. That doesn't mean that I'm not reluctant to communicate with them. And that's okay. I'm allowed to have those feelings. I just have to be very careful with how I then proceed with those feelings. And I don't always proceed in the best rational, balanced mindset, and that's okay. I am just a person. And the same goes for interacting with non-human alters that you don't know and are scary or overwhelming, like I said. It's okay to feel that way, but take your time. If there are safe people around you, a therapist, a partner, a friend, a sibling, that maybe can be around when this alter fronts, or can communicate with them, or maybe there's another alter internally who can be a mitigator for you. But we've found that, for us at least, and this is just us, we're very social as a system, so maybe this is just us, but the more that we build connection with each other, the more that we get along with each other, the easier it is to exist. It's not easy. Having trauma isn't easy. Being a system isn't easy, but it is easier. It is easier for us when we sit down and we work on a video together, and people write the script like Violet did, and people do the research like Bennet did, and I sit down and film the video, and then someone else will edit it, and it's this collaborative project that we all work on together that helps all of us trust each other more. And that might seem unrelated to non-human alters, and it kind of is, but it's something that I've wanted to say and keep wanting to say, so I'm going to tuck it in here because it is kind of applicable. People think of a demon alter and are terrified, and sure, some are terrifying, but there are demons in our system that are some of the fiercest protectors of us cis kids that I've ever met, and they will not let anyone hurt the children that they look after. And getting to witness that and being privy to the functions that they provide within the system, and them sharing little bits about themselves, is it feels like a privilege to be able to know that, and to be able to see that, and to be able to share that. And I'm very grateful for my system, and I'm very grateful that our brain did what it needed to do to survive. So yeah, closing statement: we exist. I might be human, but the we is referencing all the non-human alters out there and within my own system. Non-human alters exist. They're in the literature, they're in the lived experience, they are in our day-to-day, everyday life. They are integral and vital parts of our own system and many other systems out there. And they deserve to exist. They deserve to find their own place within the system and the world. And I hope to every non-human alter who's out there, I know this video wasn't really targeted towards you guys, but I hope that you felt it's been at least a little bit representative of you. And we encourage people to share their experiences in the comments, be that with non-human alters or just in general. We really appreciate that. We love getting comments from you guys, and we try to respond to them where we can. We did miss a couple because amnesia, but yeah. And whilst I'm on the leave a comment, try to like and subscribe if you want to. We don't make consistent videos, but we do try and continue to make videos, and we will be planning to make more in the future, including one from our non-human alters talking about their experience as being non-human. Yeah. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope this has been informative. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, stay hydrated, sated, and caffeinated, and we will see you in the next one.